My name is Pete. This is my channel, 1822 MC Adventures and More. What I'm doing today is I'm going to give you my opinion and a review of the tent that I use. And the tent that I use is a River Country Trekker 2.2. And it's a traditional 5x7 pup tent. Real simple, real basic. And it's an American-made company. That's why I chose it, among other reasons, and I will get into that as I set it up. So with that being said, let me get out of my camo and I will set the tent up for you. Alright, my ground cloth is nothing more than a piece of house wrap. It's free. How can you go wrong, right? Why do I use a ground cloth, you ask? Well, it's a vapor barrier to start with, and two, it will protect the floor of my tent from sticks and stones and whatnot. So my tent will actually last longer. Plus, remember, vapor barrier. And I use a wide variety of stakes, but the poles that I use are Swiss Army tent poles. What I did was I got 4 pouches like this with 4 poles and 4 stakes to each pouch. And I got that for $17.99 delivered to my house. It's a sectional aluminum pole. Is it a nice light fiberglass one like a backpacker would use? No, it's not, but it's nearly indestructible. And most of the stakes that I'll be using today will be these ones right here. These are Swiss Army tent stakes. Indestructible like the poles. So with that being said, let me go ahead and get this thing going. Here's the tent. You can probably fold it a little bit smaller than this if you wanted to, but I've got it folded this size because it slides into my saddlebag. It fits there perfect. Okay, now these 4 poles right here give me the 42 inches that I need for a tent pole. But what I did, so it would fit through the grommet, was I globbed in some epoxy, and then I dropped a bolt in there, and then I tightened it up with a washer and a nut, let it set, ground it down a little bit, and now it works out perfect. As you can see, the grommet slides on there. I use 2 long poles like this and set it up like an upside down V. That way I don't have to weasel around the center pole. I'm just too old to do that. Y'all might want to consider doing this too. And the reason I feel I can get away with big heavy poles like this, and of course I could always set it up with only 2 poles if I wanted to. I choose not to. I set it up like this because I'm motorcycle camping. Weight is not that much of an issue to me. Actual volume is, but weight isn't that critical to me. As long as I balance it on the motorcycle, it's fine. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this other pole and I'm going to lash them together up here. Normally how I do this, I'll just put a couple of half hitches on one of these. Don't need nothing really fancy. All it's got to do is hold. And I'll do kind of a figure 8 type wrap. Wrap it around once or twice. Finish it off with 3 half hitches. And then what I do is I simply take this tent, run it up over the top of that like that. And we're just about there. Now here's something that you do not have to do, but I like to do it. I'll grab a stick and I'll prop it up under there like that because there's a screen mesh in there opens the tent up a little bit, adds more ventilation. Now, if it was seriously cold out, you might want to keep the flap down. As you can see, I got a little extra on the ground cloth. That's to kind of help keep mud from getting tracked in and out of the tent. It helps a lot. And if it's going to rain, you just tuck it up under the tent. All right, in this tent, it opens up like this. It simply just, now this does have a zipper on it. It's just not zipped at the moment. I wouldn't zip it up unless I was in a storm. But it rolls back all nice. And it has these little toggles that hold it up. All right, so now as you can see, with the two poles up here, there's more than enough room to crawl in and out of this tent. Okay, as you can see, it's a big tent in there. And with the mesh inside, it almost acts like a second skin, which is a big positive. All right, here goes. For those of you that don't know me, I'm 6'5" and I weigh a lot. As you can see, there's more than enough room in here. Probably the only drawback is you really can't stand up, and if you're tall, you're crawling around on your hands and knees, and if it's raining out, you're going to get dressed laying on your back. But when you're just kind of traveling or you're wanting to camp kind of on the down low, a little tent like this is great. So here's what it looks like when it's set up. I got my little bolt running up through there. If you were a backpacker, you'd be using your trekking pole. I like these little toggle things. Once you figure out how they work great. And if you're seeing this milky white stuff that's on the seams of the tent, that is seam sealer. You know, you just put this goopy stuff, it's like rubber cement, you put it everywhere that there's thread. And then you buy this other stuff that's in a spray can. It's, Scotch Guard is one brand. There's several brands. Then you spray the whole tent down like you're painting it. And that waterproofs the whole fabric and it will not leak. Okay, I've already explained the importance of a ground sheet. It acts as a vapor barrier and it protects the floor of your tent. Now I know that not everybody grew up like I did. I was very fortunate in how I grew up, and one of the very nice things that I got to do was be a scout. I was a Cub Scout, I was a Weeblo, I was a Boy Scout. And even when you're a little dinky Cub Scout, they instill things to you like use a ground cloth. And to my next point, use a rain fly. Even if your tent is waterproof, you put a rain fly on there. It's a double layer, it's common sense, it's basic camping old school 101. What do I use? Well, I'm using like a $3.99 tarp from Harbor Freight in camo. It's nice to have camo tarps if you're camping on the down low. You can use one for a rain fly to hide your tent, and then you can take another one and throw it over your motorcycle and your gear, and you become almost invisible. So let's put this up, it's important. All right, and this is very important, all right? When I drape this up over the poles, you know, it wouldn't take long to rip through the tarp. So what this here is this is T-Rex tape. It's like industrial duct tape. Costs about twice as much as duct tape, but it's way more than twice as strong, so really good stuff. back, but I do use them up front, so I have a little bit of give in the front of this tarp. So here we go, the tent's all set up. I got my ground cloth, aka my vapor barrier, down, the tent's up, and I have a rain fly. All right, so now it can rain as much as it wants to. The rain's just gonna bead right off the tarp. Okay, and the type of knots I'm using, this is a taut line hitch. And I'm gonna go ahead and tie it for you so you know what it is. This is an old school Boy Scout knot. All right, you just simply bring it around, put your thumb there, you make a half hitch, you make another half hitch, then you bring it across, over, and under. And when it's done, it should look like that. And what this is, it's an adjustable knot. And as long as there's tension on this knot will stay tight. It's called a taut line hitch. Very, very basic knot. And as you can see right here, same routine, a taut line hitch. It's an adjustable knot. You know, I mean, if your tent comes with fancy toggles like that, great. But if not, simply go old school and tie a taut line hitch. Real simple, really simple. All right, so there's a good profile of what the tent looks like when it's set up from the side. And if I knew it was going to rain, anywhere you see white, I would actually tuck that under the tent. And then that way the water wouldn't have a chance to get between the ground cloth and the tarp and make life miserable. And of course the tent's going to come down just as easy as it went up. Set this off to the side, because that's another nice thing about having a ground cloth. As you're taking it down, you got a nice place to wad your tent up. And it's got a nice mesh and three-way zipper. And because of the way I tie this up, those half hitches, they slide right off the top. And then you just undo your lashing. And any old school Boy Scout manual will show you how to lash. It's very simple. It's basically common sense. Oh, wait a minute. I said common sense in 2020? What the hell was I thinking? Disregard that. Don't forget to put that back in your bag if you're doing it my way. Now when I fold it, I'll take the door and the end of it and fold it in. You can fold it over the top if you want. I prefer to do it like this. Country Products Trekker 2.2 pup tent. And these little spikes right here, they're made out of aluminum. These are actually the stakes that came with the tent, but I have them in my tarp bags because I have my rain fly, and I also have another tarp that is and I use that for like a canopy. Alrighty, now aren't aren't you glad that I was kind enough to turn the sound off when I rolled it up? Because this does make a lot of noise. Now, the only thing that would probably make my life a little easier doing it this way would be if I had maybe some compression sacks for my gear. This stuff will compress down in a few minutes, but you always kind of got to wrestle it a little bit into the saddlebag. Are compression sacks nice? Hell yeah. Are they necessary? No. And you know, you could even spend a lot more money on a tent and it could still possibly leak. This company, they had a bad production run. And for those of you out there that are talking all kinds of smack to the camera right now, well, guess what? Unless you've never signed the front of a check, you really ought to just simmer down a little bit and give it some thought, because I'm pretty damn sure this company didn't build leaky tents on purpose. They had a bad run, and now they're eating it, obviously. I mean, there's people out here like me that love these tents, that know that you just have to do a little prep to them to make them work right. And then there's people that bought a $50 tent and are crying because the thing leaks. Pretty lame if you ask me. Now my advice to the company would be this. You're an American company, I think that's awesome. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt over some Chinese Walmart shit every day of the week. But from where I'm standing, I think you have two options here. One, to start with, talk to your accountant. Get rid of these tents. Get rid of them at cost or below, and then sell them with the disclaimer that because you're getting such a good deal, the reason you're getting such a good deal is because your tent might possibly leak. And then you could do one of two things as the company. One, you could continue to sell a cheap tent that leaks and hope you stay afloat. Or you could figure out what it takes to make the tent not leak, but then you'll probably have to raise your prices. My advice would be try to find a compromise in the middle, to where see if there's a better way you can sew these tents up so they don't leak, but still I feel it is ultimately the customer's responsibility, which would be me and everyone else that buys one, to seal it up yourself. To me, that's basic camping 101, to seal your stuff up. Waterproof your gear. You can't get much more basic than that, right? You can have all the coolest gear in the world, but if it's not waterproof, it ain't gonna be worth a flip. But anyways, before I wander off too much, back to the tent. I do think the tent's a good tent. It works for me. Will it work for you? I don't know. But if you're looking for a cheap tent, this might be the one for you. As you can see, everything I use on that tent fits in that saddlebag. I got my poles in there. I got my stakes in there. I got my extra cordage in there. I got my ground cloth in there, and I have my rain fly. All in one saddlebag. So for me, this works out quite well. And like I said, I use 3 poles instead of 2 because it's easier for me. But you could set this tent up with a ridge line if you're lucky enough to find a couple of trees between flat ground. Or you can use your trekking poles. Or you can go full Daniel Boone and carve you a couple of poles, right? But to me, the bottom line is, for $49 and change delivered to my house, now I know the tent's a little more now, but for $50 delivered to my house, and then about an hour's worth of my time and about $10 worth of sealants, I'm tickled pink with the tent, and I highly recommend it if you're looking for a tent like this. Okay, well, I think I've said all I can say about this tent. Personally, for me, it's a good tent. Will it work for you? I don't know. That's your decision, not mine. But know this, if you get the tent or any of their products, my advice would be waterproof it. So hopefully you've enjoyed this review. Hopefully it's been helpful to you. Even if you don't choose this tent, I hope it helps you decide on what kind of a tent you want. But know this, I'm not a backpacker. I'm a motorcycle camper. But a lot of things that are geared towards backpacking work quite well for motorcycle camping. Just remember, as a motorcycle camper, you don't need the smallest and most ultralight stuff. You just don't need it. As long as you're not carrying, don't hate me for saying this, but as long as you're not carrying any more than a fat girl on the back of your bike, you're good to go, right? All right, for all you out there that are butthurt wanting to send me a nasty email or a comment, all right, let me rephrase that. As long as you're not hauling any more gear than a passenger, take what you want with you. Enjoy yourself. Now, if you're going on a cross-country trip, you might want to scale things down to the bare minimum. But if you're going out for overnight, a couple of days, you know, maybe a week, there's stuff you can take that you wouldn't want to take on a long trip. So the best advice I can give you on motorcycle camping is watch YouTube videos of how other people do it, and that should give you an idea on what will work for you. But just remember this, you do not need to spend a lot of money on your gear, because you might get tired of it after a while, and if you spend a bunch of money on gear, then you're going to be stuck with a bunch of expensive stuff sitting in your closet. Now, let's just wrap this up. Done. No more. Okay, my final thoughts on this tent. It's an American-made product. That is a huge plus. It's a traditional style 5x7 pup tent. And it's actually 5x7. It's not a cut down Scout model. It is waterproof once you waterproof it, but that's your responsibility